for game number 1 already, and this is what everybody is ready to go into on this one. This is where all eyes are focused in. Gore, what's the over-under on support bands for before they come through? Over-under on 3.
Wait, on the top 3 or all 10?
On the top, let's go with the top 6 total. I'm going to say total? 3 over-under.
I'm feeling over.
Over?
I'm going to, well, on.
On?
On's not an option, but I'm going with on because
fine.
I can't imagine letting Tiamat through right now. And if you're going to let Tiamat through, then things are going to get real wonky real fast for everybody involved.
Well, we do see Umoja banned away, and it's going to be Odin and Osiris. So far, 2 solo laners. So a solo/jungle on there for the side of the Osiris, but the Umoja banned away. So that's support number 1 taken off the board. This one by the Bolts, who were first pick, surprisingly. Going to be taking that one away, trying to get maybe some other kind of prioritization. We've been seeing a ton of Ymir between the two of them. That was the bulk of their highlights were the Ymir, so I imagine maybe that is priority number 1 for these teams. See Fenrir taken off the board. Not quite a support as much anymore, still more into that jungle role as of recent.
But flexible, I think that's the key, right? If you pick it up on the Bolts, 9 times out of 10 I'm saying, okay, that's probably Lasbra. Like, a majority of the games, it's going to be Lasbra picking it up. If the Kings scoop it up, I'm not so sure anymore. Same thing like if you give it to someone like the Dragons. But I think this is an interesting point just because if you you bounce back and you go back and look at what the last time these teams played, just in Phase 2 as an example, like Bolts, hey, guess what? They're 8-0. They won the set. That's not necessarily a big surprise, but it was pushed to 3 games. That's something the Kings are really adept at doing, and I wouldn't be surprised if they are going to give them a lot of trouble today just in general. I mean, this is, looking at like the next 3 or 4 matchups for the Bolts, I think this is like one of the most difficult, if not just straight up the most difficult, taking on the number 2 team, and that's going to be the difficult thing to try and tackle is the control here, and you can see like with the support bands that already came out, they know where some of the problems are, but at the same time, I mean, you still get 2 of the best mids coming through. You're going to have as well some of the best junglers that are still available for both teams. It's a lot on the line to me.
Bit of an apology there onto that one. We did have it flipped onto there. It is the Kings who are going to be first pick, so they are the ones who are doing the bans on the Umoja, the ban on the Ymir as well. But that did open the wings for the Tiamat and the Morgan Le Fay to come through here. So Kings prioritizing the Tiamat over Morgan Le Fay, where we've seen in the past some teams prioritize Morgan Le Fay over Tiamat. So we'll kind of see where that lies in wait here. But onto the flip side now. Into the SEC, we got trolled because nobody was picking Artemis. It didn't get banned or picked for 2 straight games, but back here into the SPL, thank goodness people understand just how strong Artemis is. Banned away by the Bolts, but also open for the Gilgamesh to be picked up by the Bolts, and now the Erlong Shen on the side of the Kings.
I like this, again, set up from both sides. Like Gilgamesh drop kicks into what Morgan Le Fay and presumably eventually Bear is going to feel really solid. But Erlong Shen has been a great pick so far this year for Captain Twig, and I think it fits well with Tiamat having very easy follow-up damage. And this is a unique thing. So, and I'm gonna out myself here real fast. I schedule a lot of tweets so I don't spam people's timelines with outrageous stats and numbers.
You don't do this in real time.
But someone asked yesterday about specifically the Tiamat versus Morgan Le Fay matchup because it's been happening a little more recently, right? And Tiamat is 4 games to 3 over Morgan Le Fay. So she's got 4 wins versus 3 wins there for Morgan Le Fay. So she's got a little bit of an edge. But this is where things are a little more concerning because what we've seen more recently is those games going to Tiamat. Yesterday, it was overwhelmingly Tiamat, and Morgan Le Fay wasn't able to do so much. So just on that metric, the Bolts are going to have a lot of work to kind of make up for right here. And I think that the Gilgamesh, and I would even argue this Ares, is a great step in that direction.
Well, awesome, Jake. Not willing to wait until the second phase of picks to get his support in. He'll lock in that Ares very quickly at the tail end of that one. And Netroid will get the ROM as well. So we do get to see a little bit of quick support picks. And now we'll start seeing a couple more support bans out of the Bolts. First one being that Fafnir. Or on the flip side, we do see the Cucullin taken away by the Kings. And I can only imagine maybe a Terra ban? Well, hold on. Terra's still available. Terra's got to be banned here by the Bolts.
Banned. I can't imagine 100%. They let her through with the way things have been going. Well, I guess so. It's so. And Solo. Here's where the problem comes because there's so many good supports out there that they've managed to take off. I mean, they've only taken out 2. There's 2 on the other side that were banned out, plus the Ares, which you can consider quote-unquote banned since it's no longer available for the Kings. And yet you're still sitting there like, well, they still have X, Y, and Z that they can play, and genetics is going to play well. That's why this conversation is so important to me, because it's just like, damn, we tried our best to limit him, and it didn't do anything.
So maybe they picked the Terra solo lane here just to grab it away. That gets him another Guardian, though.
Yeah, but that's just not
so likely.
Not Haddix to me.
Yeah, it's not a Haddix. It's not a Chadix god. I mean, when I think Haddix, I don't think of a Terra who kind of just sits there under the tower for the first couple of levels. I'm thinking of gods like a Gilgamesh, like a King Arthur, locked in here onto the sides of the bolt, so they're going to be able to grab that one there and get Haddix something comfortable into the solo lane. That's going to elect it over to the Kings, where I imagine Gen X will probably pick up this Terra, but there are still other gods available. Cerberus, he's shown that it's in the roster, as well as Khepri, as that one's being picked up here, and will be locked in on the side of the Kings. Still one more pick available. It's going to be their solo laner, I imagine, for that one, as the Erlong Shen was picked up, probably going over into jungle.
Now, I talked about the Ares. I think it's like 7-1 right now for Jake. He's played 8 games, and he's won an overwhelming majority of them. When it gets locked in, we'll cover it. But King Arthur, 86%, 87% if you really want to bump it up there for specifically Haddix as a win rate. I mean, if the Bolts are going to win, they're doing everything in their power by picking some of their best gods.
All right, so now that this Hell is locked in, is this going to be a solo lane Hell, or is this going to be a solo lane Tiamat? Because I don't imagine either of those go into the jungle very well. You already have the Erlong Shen. Oh, he's flexible to a couple of other spots there.
Here's why. Big Man Ting should be piloting Tiamat. In 7 games, it has an 86% win rate in his hands, 11.2 KDA, 626 gold per minute, and 72% kill participation. And that's over 7 games, so a fairly big sample size for stats that are that nuts. It would be crazy to take this Tiamat out of Ting's hands. He's in the arguments for the best Tiamat in the SPL. So I like that they don't take it out of his hands. I'm curious on how Variety is going to be able to hold on during this laning phase. Vamp Shroud being good certainly helps the mage in the solo, but still a scary thought to go up against something like a King Arthur that has all of this mobility in order to chase you down. But
unique aspect of this Olympus Bolts team, and in the Camelot Kings as well. Variety's put together a very good Season 8, but I'll hold that thought as Captain Twig under the threat of first blood, but look at the knockup on the backside, and Twig will secure his escape. Lasbra and Ven thought they had one, but instead, Twig makes it out.
The only way he lives in that situation, I think. Pre-beads the Dragonflight, then go back through them with the knockup. Very, very smart play from Captain Twig, as expected from a veteran of his status. And his capability in this game is going to be key, because as much as I like the Hell and its capability to cleanse all the CC coming from the bolts, who can start fights? Because it can't be Variety, and it can't really be Gen X.
Uh-oh, Captain Twig. I don't think he's going to escape this one. Haddix and Lasbra combine, and no beads, no chance of the escape, and the blue buff is coming up. This is where some of that threat was, wasn't it, when you can put this pressure onto the Hell?
And oftentimes, whenever you've got a low-pressure solo laner or a susceptible solo laner, it's really not it's not the solo laners themselves that suffer. It's the junglers, because you can't be there to help out on their right side of the map. It's things like that on your kitchen light, you know? Sometimes you want a little brighter, sometimes you need a little dimmer, and you need some more options between on and off.
The Camelot Kings are much better for it, because remember at the beginning of the year we talked about this team. Mifflin specifically, I think, used the term Dark Horse. I don't know if Dark Horse does these guys justice anymore. I mean, they are in the race. They're not a Dark Horse in the race. Just like Netrioid might be a Dark Horse to survive here in the duo lane. Lasbra drops down Winds of Shamash. The snipes are there, but Barracuda and Laz on either end of it, waiting for the kill to fall, and it's Barracuda who picks it up. Well timed. Not much Netrioid could do about it. Doesn't even bother burning the bead, but still some skirmishing on the right-hand side.
Twig's in trouble. His beads are still down, but no pull thanks to Variety's Hell.
Variety, though, now caught in the fray, and Awesome Jake will pick up and kill the Olympus Bolts, picking apart the Camelot Kings all across the map. Netrioid down on left, Variety down on right, and the Olympus Bolts have 3 kills on the board now, 1.8k gold in the lead.
I think Variety assumed Genetics and Big Man Tings are going to be there a little bit earlier, but even if they were, I don't think that's a fight they win. Just not enough damage between any of their damage dealers at this point. Genetics was so close to saving Variety's life with that Scarab's Blessing, but ended up being just barely out of range. And with those picks on each side, it's going to be a Gold Fury for the Olympus Bolts, who were not up by a lot just a few seconds ago, but all of a sudden, less than 10 minutes in.
Onto that, of course, but you know, if Awesome Jake continues doing what he did, remember he solo ulted Captain Twig a moment ago just to burn the beads.
Yep.
And you know, he wasn't super concerned about that. So little plays like that tend to make the difference for the Bolts and allow them to keep doing what they want to be doing here. Pyromancer started up, Captain Twig is close by. Variety is as well. Pyro resets. So the Camelot Kings feeling like they get aggressive here. The double taunt in from Captain Twig, who then dashes away. But Awesome Jake burning away at the front line here. There's a slight knock-up on the back end. The pull is there onto Variety, but will use the beads to keep himself at bay.
Still if you trade beads for Ares ult, the vast majority of the time, that's a win for the Ares. The difference here is that there's a hell on the other side, so not always a guaranteed win for you. But I like that this is great for the Kings. Pyromancer doesn't even fall for the bolts. Barracuda makes a big rotation all the way over to that fight, just in case. And the Kings disengage it at the right time. They don't stick around, and they let Netrioid continue to push. He gets the first tower on the left side, gets a couple extra waves that Barracuda does not. And does that amount to a massive lead? Of course not. But it shows good map presence from the Kings.
Anti-heal then becomes a topic of conversation. The conversation we'll have in a moment after Awesome Jake goes down and the Camelot Kings find themselves on the board. Just a bit of an overstay from Jake on the Ares. Get taken into combat, you can't blink away. Easy pickings for the Kings. And they're going to shrink up that gold gap even further. Now the Pyromancer gets picked up as well. Remember, we were looking at 2K plus. Right back through
just 3 items, and that's got to feel really good for big man. And the lack of flat pen doesn't really matter too much because he's so far ahead that he's going to do a ton of damage to someone like this Gilgamesh, who's down 4 levels to him, 2 levels to his jungle opposition.
Uh-oh, Genetics a bit caught out here. He'll dash away, but Lasbro wants to close that gap around the side. Both of the carries for the Camelot Kings close the gap, and Lasbro left alone. 1 and 2, good on to Barracuda. Is the third there. It's Aegis out, but now Big Man Tings can jump on in, and he's got the damage, and Barracuda's got no chance. Now Awesome Jake being chased down. The chains are out, and he'll dodge out the pin, so he'll survive for the time being.
Captain Twig's going to find Ven, force out the ultimate, though, and Ven's already uses Purification Beads. This is a great dive coming from Twig, but maybe a little too much.
What do the Kings want to do here? You've got Big Man Tings feeling good about himself now, but a bit risky to go for a dive against Ven and Awesome Jake at this point. Oni Fury is there. That's what the Camelot Kings are considering for the time being. Captain Twig needs someone else to start it up, and Big Man Tings will be the one alongside Genetics ultimately tanking things. Big swing now. Barracuda goes down. The Camelot Kings pick up a kill. And the Oni Fury were brought right back to even a little bit ahead now for the Kings.
2 kills in their favor because they killed Lasbro's ultimate. You can't commit both your dashes or your jumps and your ultimates to him unless you know he's alone and that you can kill him off the res. And there was no world in which the Olympus Bolts were going to kill him off the res. And I don't think the game plan should be, let's hope he forgets to ult himself, or we like burst him before he ults himself.
Doesn't happen often.
No, that doesn't seem like a good game plan to me.
And that opened up then Big Man Tings, who again has this big level lead in Netrioid, finds some damage. Haddix gets taunted back through, has to use the beads, but maybe a dive coming here from the Camelot Kings. The root is there on the other end, but Haddix will dash on away. Tier 1 tower eventually goes down, but watch out. Here come the Olympus Bolts from the left side. Awesome Jake's got his ultimate, but doesn't want to use it yet.
And see the difference of the Bolts. Normally, if Lasbro were a little bit closer to, the level 18 that Tiamat is, I think he'd be blink ulting in that spot. But he's built to pull full damage. He's going to get one-shot by this back line, and so he can't start that fight. Jake walks up and takes this type of damage instead.
My goodness, Awesome Jake. Yeah, I can't participate here. Venenu gets ticked down by a little bit of damage there as well. So the Camelot Kings, without FG, sieging up a Tier 2 tower on the right-hand side, shy of 20 minutes into the game. And this one is going to go cleanly. The Olympus Bolts don't have much of a leg to stand on. At this point, if you're the Bolts, maybe you're just hoping that the Kings reach level 20 and you can start to close up that gap.
For Camelot Kings. But I would call them heavily favored from this position because this is the point of the game that they drafted for, and they've gotten here.
They've gotten here, and they've gotten here convincingly. And the Olympus Bolts now hoping, as you mentioned, some of those builds will catch up. Looks like Venenu was considering a Soul Reaver, abandoned it after Tier 1, ended up going Obsidian Shard. A little percent pen online might help with some of those frontliners that are diving in. Jake has to use the blink, and that is tough, isn't it, on this Ares where you want to blink in an ult, and then if you get some pulls and you die, you're okay with it? Don't have that ability now under the FG, and that's what the Camelot Kings are going to take advantage of. They're going to start up the Fire Giant.
Genetics can tank this for a while if Variety's going to be able to heal it up, but Variety's frontline.
Oh, Frenzy is used here, and Awesome Jake will use the pull. He's got a lot in the chains, but he'll be killed off before it matters. Killing spree for Big Man Tings, and the Camelot Kings routing the Olympus Bolts in a Fire Giant skirmish. Back to the FG go the Kings. this one should go quietly.
I'm pretty sure, I thought I recognized him on my milk carton this morning, but Lasbra's missing, apparently. He wasn't there.
Call someone about
yeah,
that.
we should call someone about it. He was in that fight very momentarily because he dropped to the ult. But that's
do
what
it again, right? I mean,
No, Morgan Le Fay is really good, okay? Really, really good.
I'm saying the answer to Tiamat. They're like, look, Tiamat lost a few games. We could do it again. Right?
Yeah, I don't think anyone remembers those at this point. I think they're remembering the losing to the minions, which doesn't even happen anymore.
Right.
For the record, it's just that her late game poke damage with the 1 is unbelievable.
Yep.
She's hard to kill. I don't know, man. I just don't think they're in the same class anymore.
We're going to just see how hard Big Man Tings is to kill here. Depending on how aggressively or defensively he wants to position, the Olympus Bolts are going to have a difficult time getting back there. Good news is, if he's able to stay out of combat somehow, Awesome Jake has his blink and the ult. Bad news is, once Twig and Netrioid wait 5 seconds, every single person on the Camelot Kings is going to have their beads, and there's a hell on the other side. So target selection difficult. Haddix has chosen genetics, maybe just because that's who ended up standing in front of him. Look how much damage Jake has taken for walking forward. Half HP now on the Ares, and he's got to back off.
And that was just Big Man Tings. Dropped that Typhoon and a great blink in from Twig.
Barracuda answers with his ultimate, though, to avoid being taunted back through. Lasbra has to jump defensively here, and Netrioid will roll away. Olympus Bolts, without a doubt, looking for worse for wear after that small little skirmish. 3 members at half HP, left Phoenix gone. Back to the fountain they go, and the Camelot Kings got what they came for.
Just perfect. I mean, it's Haddix blinks in and looks to start the fight, but Big Man has already dropped that Typhoon on top of Jake, so he can't blink in, and he's taking damage the entire time. He can't afford to walk forward. And so all of a sudden, Haddix is alone and has to immediately back up upon landing because his team isn't going to be there. I don't know if Lasbra needs to go in at that exact same time.
This game, if that gives you some sort of indication of how difficult it's been for Lasbra on this Gilgamesh. The next Fire Giant will respawn here. And I think, with no surprise, the Olympus Bolts are going to take their chances underneath their Phoenixes instead of stepping up to contest.
They just need Lasbra to get some more farm. I just don't know. You know, he's working on a Titan's Bane. And we talk about it a lot, where when you're behind, building defense obviously doesn't make a difference because you just get one shot anyways, so you might as well build some damage. I think this might be the exception to that rule. I think I would have liked to see Lasbra try and get some sort of tankiness down, you know, a Spirit Robe or a Mantle of Discord, just get some all procs and try to be able to withstand this onslaught that is the Camelot Kings.
The Camelot Kings now turn their eyes towards the Phoenix that was first opened up earlier on in this game, right side, and look at how much damage it is passively taken here. Now you do have to worry about fire minions. Waves pushing down the left. Awesome Jake uses his ultimate there, but Variety cleanses everyone. No beads have to get used there, but the Olympus Bolt able to re-engage now on the back end. What's happening here? The Camelot Kings starting to crumble. 1 down, but there's a kill traded out. Vananu on the backside still wailing away. A Captain Twig, low health targets. If Variety is able to re-engage, but he's not. And the Olympus Bolt stands strong under their right side Phoenix.
They stand strong, but they're not able to really get as many kills as they needed if they want to really turn this game. Still, they keep their right side Phoenix alive momentarily, but with how much damage their Titan's going to take from this fire wave and being able to defend that left side Phoenix as it spawns, I'm not surprised the Kings are going to try their hand at sticking around, but I don't think they can do it without Netrioid here, and they will have to back it up. And the big difference there, Dave, for the Bolts, is that they're able to actually initiate the fights like their composition rate res off anyways. He got Big Man Tings, extended his life. Still, Tings ends up falling in the end. But that was much better from the Bolts. And now their Phoenixes are up. They've got a chance, but they can't lose Jake here.
This game is far from over, but it could be if this fight goes the way of either team. And the first kill goes to the Kings, immediately traded out as Netrioid goes down. Captain Twig chasing down Barracuda. Has he got the damage? Yes, he does. Down goes Barra, then Awesome Jake. Follow him to the grave as well. Now Lasbra has to use the beads, but the Camelot Kings, they found their picks. They're chasing down the Stragglers, and they'll take game 1.
That was huge for the Kings. It nearly worked out well for the Bolts. Lasbra's drop kick had actually hit Variety into Captain Twig. It would have stunned them both, and Barra might have been able to do some nasty things with that Hachiman, but it was just barely off the mark on an incredibly difficult to execute play, and it ends up not being quite enough. Jake just in the wrong spot on that Ares, just gets picked way too early, doesn't use his ultimate as CC immunity, doesn't blink away. If it was up, it might not have been whenever he got rooted, but all I know is that he didn't get a chance to affect that fight at all, and I don't think the Bolts were winning that fight 5v4.
I don't think Awesome Jake here is going to have anything to say about this Titan defense, and the Camelot Kings will take down the Olympus Bolts in game number
on the
one.
side of the Kings, where he is getting a lot of setup, and it led to a lot of ease of access for players like Netruoid, where everything was, now I don't want to say provided for him. He hit a lot of really good shots. There was actually some sick ults that happened throughout this entire game as well. But the damage numbers between him and BMT was just too much to handle, and Aggro had highlighted it earlier. I had listed them out. But BMT had won 6 out of 7, now 7 out of 8 of these Tiamat games that he's gotten to play this year. I mean, it is absolutely insane to see what this player has been able to do on this god. And it did kind of showcase to us that, you know what, yes, while we think Tiamat might actually be maybe better, quote-unquote, for solo, not if BMT is going to be playing it, especially if Variety is going to be able to pull a hell out like this. I mean, that 5-man cleanse was, I mean, maybe one of the best hell plays I've gotten to see. And that's including last year when there were a lot of really sick hell plays. I mean, it is just amazing to see what they were capable of doing. And it was despite a little bit of an early game lead there for the Bolts.
And Big Man Ting's not just upping one more Tiamat win in his personal column, but also one more Tiamat win over Morgan Le Fay. Now 5-3 up against that god into there. So maybe we see some priority shift here for the Bolts in game number 2 to maybe either pick that one up or at least take it away from Big Man Tings at the very least of. And topping the damage charts onto it as well. 20,000 player damage. No one else. Talking about maybe just go ahead and ban the Tiamat and give them the option. Do you want Morgan Le Fay? Do you want Osiris? Because then we get the flip end of it. I think that's a good call into that one because characteristically, as of late, Osiris, at least out of the jungle, hasn't had the strongest of performances, and even into the solo lane, kind of waning a little bit onto the lower end of it.
Yeah, it's all about the pivot, right? I mean, a lot of it, as you had highlighted, like it's so difficult to tackle. How many gods have we mentioned necessary to ban so far this set? Because I feel like it's gotten to the point where it's almost 10.
A lot.
Like it's too difficult. And what's interesting to me is that the Bolts are making a heavy pivot, and maybe even saying that well, as of right now, that maybe it's not the Tiamat that's the problem, but maybe the healing that came through. Plus, I mean, you gotta face it, Hell plus Khepri in the middle of a team fight is maybe one of the most frustrating things to play against. Because, like you said, you can all in 3 people. Get them all to 10% health, and then they get out. They get out alive either from a res, they get out alive either from a good heal, maybe a good cleanse, as we saw several times, but it's something that they're going to have to, I think, figure out here.
Well, they will go with the Tiamat ban, as well as the Osiris and Hell mentioned previously, and on to the flip side, we see the same 3 bans out of the Kings, the Umoja, the Odin, and the Ymir taken off the table. So that does leave Morgan Le Fay available if the Kings wish to grab that one for Big Man Tings right away, though there are still some other mid laners out there. Raijin has been one of the big ones onto it.
Artemis still available as well, which is something that was the last ban from the Bolts in game 1. And it's that difficult question you got to ask yourself right now. How much better is Artemis than, say, like your Roms or some of these other hunters we've seen showcased over the last couple of days and last week, versus how great is like Morgan Le Fay versus some, your Raijins, your Merlins, etc. How well and how highly do you value some of these really high-pressure picks that could potentially change a lot of it? So they're back in it because Bear just took a bite of bread. That's they're in this for serious now.
We'll have to figure out what grain he's eating on today, because he normally has the 12 grain.
Man.
So we'll have to find out what he's eating today, because I mean this is a big one for him. He's got to have the right grain ready to go for it. But it's gonna be the Gilgamesh first pick coming here for the Kings, making sure to pick that one up and keep it in their hands nice and safely. Now, it flips back over to the Bolts. They've got free reign of it. They've got 2 picks. They've got Morgan Le Fay they can go. They've got Artemis that they can go for.
And that'd be my 2.
I think so. Look. Mivla and I watched an SCC set this morning, and Artemis was left open 2 games, didn't get banned, didn't get picked the whole way through, and instead of Cupid got locked in its place onto it. So I can never count anybody out onto this if they want to pass it by, but it will be Morgan Le Fay locked in here for the Bolts grabbing that. Still one more pick left.
I will say, if there is a hunter in the game, there are 2 hunters I think I could give this credit to. If they were going to not pick Artemis to play against it, it would probably be Bera and Zap, right? Just because of tenure and the history they've had. They've played against it so many times when it was meta that they might be like the most willing to say, okay, you know what, we can deal with it. But I think this is like the must-have top 2, right? I mean, you highlighted it's like, look at the top 2 power picks that are almost always banned that are available right now. Hey, I'm going to scoop him up immediately. That Gilgamesh is going to have to put in so much work because of those counter picks that the Bolts just grabbed.
Well, Rom is going to be the response one more time. Netroid's really been swaying towards this god. I'm sure you could probably get me the exact numbers on what this player specifically has done for this Rom, but it seems earlier on into the season, he really liked the On Her. It was a really strong pick for him. He made some killer plays onto it, got a few really cinematic solo kills with it, but now he's been straying back to the ROM. We see Genetics again go onto the Khepri as well to round out this duo lane and still leave a little bit of ambiguity with this Gilgamesh pick.
And you were asking for the numbers for it, but 5-1 now,
Wow.
including that last game.
Okay.
4-1 prior to this, so he's been doing pretty well on it. Hey, numbers really comparable to someone like Big Man Tings' Tiamat, so something you need to be worried about. But it is the matchup versus the Artemis, right? Artemis has a lot of CC. I like Rom's ult, I think, a little bit more just because it is something that you can control a little more, like, attainably, as opposed to where Tusky goes. Sometimes Tusky helps, sometimes Tusky leaves you out for dead and left to dry, so we'll figure it out, but I think that Barra's going to be more than happy with it. The CC that Artemis brings is going to be crucial in the middle of a team fight and very helpful for them. Plus, they strip this Erlong away from the jungle. I guess that Gilgamesh probably already did that, but they get a good pick for Lasbra, another setup-oriented pick. There were a couple of drop kicks that didn't really quite hit the mark last game, as well as the unfortunate fall behind in the jungle that they had. And so hopefully this is going to be something to get them a little bit more on track and straighten the ship.
Well, Fenrir and Raijin band away for the Bolts, making sure to keep a premier mid laner taken down, and as well as a premier jungler in that Fenrir. We're on the flip side. The Kings respond with a couple of support bans. They've already got Genetics gods on there. Might as well ban a couple away from Jake. They're going to take away his Ares from last game, which, if there wasn't a hell, would have been really sick, because he had 5 people in that one ult by the Phoenix.
Yep.
But there was a hell, and so that just means cleanse, and we're good to go. And then also banning the Geb away, Horus locked in here.
Wow.
Now this is a little bit of a spicy one. Only seen 3 games so far, as you see. Only won 1 of those 3. Now that's just overall in the SPL, but now Jake picking up this god.
If I remember correctly, one of the picks that Horus has had is Jake, and that's the thing that's really weird. I had prepared it as one of the potential talking points on Waiting Room, where it's just, I mean, it's not something we see often. Who's played it other than him? Wrong you, right? It's realistically only been 2 supports that are hammering this one forward, but he's got a lot of great things. I think, especially against a Khepri, you've got Prot Shred, you've got a reliable stun, you've got a knock-up. It enables this Artemis, I think, to continue aggression, as well as a heal and some really cool team fight and team play capabilities that we might be able to see. And so I like this duo lane. I will say, this is relying, I think, a lot on the Hunters early on. Khepri has good defensive clear. Horus is really hoping that Artemis is going to do a lot, so realistically, I think the Kings, for the first few levels, are going to be able to control that lane.
It almost, with Horus and Artemis combo together, almost kind of gives me a pseudo vibe of like a Jingwei Terra lane, where one of them gets the stun for the setup into, the persistent gust knockup for it, but in this case, it's going to be Horus doing both the stun and the knockup, but setting up into a trap after on for that one for the Artemis to get that. So a lot of CC potential, a lot of kill potential in that lane for them. And to round out the draft for the Kings, they go with the Hera into the mid lane for Big Man Tings. They grab the Xing Chen as well.
That needed to be a necessity if they weren't in the first pick position. And the Bolts, remember, they get to choose as the losers which side they want to be on. They choose second pick, and I think they came away with the better draft overall, because you get Morgan Le Fay and Artemis, and that's really what you need. You just need those 2 gods, and your back line is solidified. The one question mark I have about the Bolts draft, how effective is this Horus really going to be? He's all about single target. He's all about setting up to kill one person, and that's what Khepri plays against better than anyone. So I'm curious on
this time in the individual picks, but maybe not so different in the way that lane goes. I mean, you expect the Xing Chen to absorb a lot of, or take a lot of pressure, I guess is the way I'm trying to word it, right, early on. So maybe that's an opportunity for the Olympus Bolts here. They can try to put some pressure on this blue buff maybe in the next couple rotations.
Pretty similar to how you want to play against the Hell, right? Starve her out from the blue buff, don't give her that farm and XP. Xing Chen similar, but obviously gets to a point where it's not the sustain that becomes the problem, it's the survivability, like Whirlwind of Rage and Steel. A lot of those do not get DR'd, And there's a lot of tanks on the side of the Bolts that don't have CC immunity that you can kill.
Early pressure onto the blue buffs is something we thought we would see. Captain Twig's got something to say about it, though. Lasbra drop kicked against the wall. Haddix does steal away the blue. And luckily for the Bolts, that one is how that ends up, as Haddix is able to get the blue buff, but Lasbra has to use his beads.
This is similar, though, so to be fair, it's not like saying the Bolts can't do that exact same sort of style, but these slower-paced early games, when you've got a Guardian in solo, he's only lost 1 blue buff the entire game, it's much better. And I'm not surprised that the Bolts are going with this type of pace, considering how last game went. I think if I'm Lasbra, I'm saying, hey guys, you know, that's on me. I kind of didn't do it. I wasn't able to keep pace and farm. I'm going to need to do more with farming in this game.
Where a Wind of Rage and Steel gets used early. That means Variety under a bit of pressure here. Luckily, Haddix able to get that kill. The taunt from Lasbra just a bit wide, but that's okay because Haddix had the knockback there. And then First Blood over to the Olympus Bolts. Hey, it's similar, isn't it? Haddix got First Blood in game 1. Now Haddix got First Blood here in game number 2. And so the Olympus Bolts happy to finally get something going, and they've quietly aggro built up about a 1,000 gold lead.
So then getting First Blood bounty or, you know, killing this Guardian or whatever, making sure the Lasbra is able to stay pace and stay close.
Awesome Jake stuns Big Man Tings. Polymorph catches onto the Horus, but that's about it. Now Genetics will have to use the Scarab's Blessing on himself. That seems to be enough now for the Olympus Bolts. Big ultimate to be down here. If you want to have a return fight somewhere on the map, Genetics is going to have to get that res done the old-fashioned way, and that's with some peel on your backliners.
That fight goes so well, though, to your ally, and then instantly 2 on top of her there. You know, you've got options in order to play around this lack of CC immunity, and now just pin from Lasbra is potential lethal up against this Hera. So I love that play from the Bolts. They don't overplay their hand, they don't overcommit, and it opens up something like this.
That's right. Smart from the Olympus Bolts. Let's take advantage of a small advantage that might become bigger if the Gold Fury gets taken down. Genetics eats a knock-up alongside Captain Twig, who has to leap over the wall back to the red buff. Still no ultimate for Genetics, and that means Haddix picks up the first kill of the fight. Awesome Jake looking for the chase, but there's nothing to be found, and the Olympus Bolts find one and turn back towards the Gold Fury.
Ooh, nice ultimate from Haddix. Gave himself CC immunity. Now it's Twig, who's in trouble because of the dive from Jake.
That is so much damage onto Twig, but Netroid's got the snipes, and Barra goes down. Variety alone in the back line now, and the Olympus Bolts suddenly in full retreat here as the Camelot Kings with Netroid and BMT turn the tables. And they pick up 2 kills.
And you see the value of having something long-ranged like this ROM. I mean, what other type of character can impact the fight in that way? You know, your frontliner's getting dove, Captain Twig's in some trouble from a really nice play from Haddix and Jake, but Lasbra, Ven, and Barra just take too much damage from the Gold Fury, and that's one of the weaknesses of this build for Hunters. They don't have something like the Devo gloves early like they used to in order to get even a little bit of sustain off the Gold Fury. Netroid makes the great snipes happen, and then the dive comes in after that. Well played from the Kings.
Haddix steal this one away. No, he can't. Won't even really give an attempt there. The Camelot Kings kept up the DPS, and Haddix didn't give it a chance. And so now the Camelot Kings
jumping Jake for walking in.
Yep.
Where he doesn't have wards. He might be a little bit more trepidatious in stepping his foot in the jungle, and that could buy you some time to secure it.
As hard as that is to imagine.
Yes. Yes.
It could happen for Jake. Pyromancer pulled by the Bolts here. Camelot Kings considering an Oni Fury. You have to imagine then, aggro, or maybe it's not difficult to imagine, that this next Oni Fury, massive as far as the next 5 or so minutes of this game go, because that's where the Camelot Kings found a lot of their early advantage.
It could be, but I think that Oni Fury fights like this are oftentimes where teams will lose games. Like, if you're the Bolts here, what's worst case scenario if they pull this? That they then use the pressure on duo side to go to fire? I think I'm down to take a firefight at this point if I'm the Bolts, if the Kings are starting it for me. So if I'm the Bolts, I'll poke my head in. I'll make sure they don't get this for free, but I don't want to take a fight that loses us the game.
So maybe if there's a fight, it could be impactful. Or Haddix,
there's a fight.
Founds the back line. It's a big knock-up from the Kuko, and Argus has found the grouping of the Olympus Bolts roster. Snipes from Netroid tickle a little bit of damage into the Olympus Bolts, but they're able to back away just fine. 3 ultimates down for the Camelot Kings, 3 ultimates down for the Bolts.
Lasbra pretty low, so he's going to try and reset and gets it off in time. But Variety knows about it. I think he placed that ward in time, so they know that there's only 4 people here on the Oni Fury.
Oni Fury pulled now by the Olympus Bolts and abduct onto Awesome Jake. Hey, he's dead this time around. Big Man Tings and Netrioid, they've got the damage. It's been reset, but hasn't really. The Camelot Kings take down the Oni Fury, and Barracuda's not able to get the kill with the rest of the Olympus Bolts onto Variety. Bit of a fumble there.
Value for sure. That's, you want to talk about buy one, get one free. I don't think Variety didn't even buy one.
He didn't buy one.
He got two free.
Yeah, I'll take that deal every day of the week. Could be a free one, though, for the Olympus Bolts, and it is, and it's Barracuda who picks up the kill. Watch out in the rest of the fight, though, because Genetics has abducted Haddix, and Netrioid rolls aggressively in the back to find the kill. Whirlwind of Rage and Steel puts Awesome Jake in a bit of a tough spot. Now the rest of the Camelot Kings trying to chase him down, but a blink might get him out to safety. He turns back just briefly. Now it's a knock-up onto Genetics, and Argus still swinging away. Lasbra might reinitiate, but he chooses otherwise.
Oh, big blink in from Variety. Double knock-up, double polymorph. Barracuda nowhere to go. Beautiful play coming out of the King solo layer just when the Bolts thought they'd gotten away.
I thought they had gotten away as well, and now the Camelot Kings have eyes on this Tier 2. Bolts down 2 members, Captain Twig up in 5 for the Camelot Kings. And the Tier 2 likely falls. Jake tried to back there. Luckily this time won't be punished for it. And so big fusion of gold over to the Camelot Kings. Not only does the kill
through a team fight yet. I feel like Barra is getting that forced from Variety solo dives, and if Variety gets Artemis ult for every single one of his blink ults, that is a massive win for the Kings. And if I'm Ven or someone else on the Bolts, I think I'm telling Barra, yo, just use your beads. Normally that's the opposite. You know, you want to use your shorter cooldown first. Use the beads and save the ultimate for when they all in commit, because we need that chain stun in order to win these fights.
Olympus Bolts might have an opportunity to win a fight around the Fire Giant, as the Camelot Kings have started it up just a moment ago. Active down. That's Venenu without his beads. Look out, Lasbra dealing damage to Captain Twig. There's the pin on the backside as well, and that's forced the ultimate out of both junglers. But watch out, Awesome Jake on the reinitiation, but he's alone. Nobody took it with him, and Netrioid picks up the kill.
I think it's right that they didn't take it with him, because he went straight into the teeth, and now Venenu trying to lifesteal through all the damage coming from the Kings. And he dodges out that last snipe, still juking Variety.
Watch out, though. Netrioid taken low. He's got the Scarab's blessing on himself, and the Bolt's not able to clean up the kill. Venenu and Jake are gone. Nobody from the Camelot Kings is dead. Netrioid's had to leave, so a TKO onto 1. But the chase begins, and Big Man Tings leading the charge. Argus is the one right up front there. Caledonian Boar out from Barracuda. It's bot, 3 big stuns, and now the Olympus Bolts can maybe turn it around, but there's not enough damage. There's an abduct from Genetics, the kill from Variety, and the Camelot Kings running away with this game.
Argus is doing more than most of the Bolts of these fights, man. He's still going and is going to get the killing blow for Big Man Tings onto Haddix. That whole fight, Argus is just chasing Barra and putting damage into him, and directly on top of Variety, who goes, sure, what are you going to do? I'm just going to preemptively use my Xing Chen ultimate, and the Bolts were right to not take that ultimate. It was just not a good ultimate there at all for Jake, who continues to struggle in this system.
Can Jake make magic happen and steal away the FG? No, he cannot. And the Camelot Kings, without much sweat, are actually able to get that one. Actually, it could be worse here. Awesome Jake lucky not to get stunned against the wall, but I don't think it's going to matter. They get an FG and a pick on a Jake. Luckily, his death timer at level 13 low enough that it'll be up in 35 seconds. But that's 35 seconds of free push.
That matters. Yeah, that's not a free, you know, sometimes it's fine to throw your support's life away in order to try your hand with the 1% steal, but that one matters because the Kings, I know they just won that fight heavily and they got fire and all that stuff, but they haven't reset. You know, that's not a Phoenix that the Bolts should be losing. If they're 5v5, the Bolts are in a fine position to contest that because the Kings are still relicless coming out of that fight for Big Man. They still haven't back to buy. You're not, that's the weakest the Kings will be for the rest of this game, is on that mid-Phoenix siege. And if I'm the Bolts, I wanted to be there.
To defend one of these Phoenixes, right? I mean, you didn't do it when it was even. You gotta hope that these level and gold differentials are low enough that you stand a chance.
And whenever everyone's condensed, things like Caledonian Boar get a lot better. And Barra, I mean, you saw how good his ultimate was at the end of that Fire Giant fight, and that was without any extra damage coming through. If he's able to do that in the midst of a 5-on-5, I think you like the Bolts' chances a lot more than you have up until this point, but now the Kings are much stronger.
Draugr buff is there, so 1 thumbs up from the Olympus Bolts, maybe half a thumbs up. It's only going to buy just a second or two. So the Camelot Kings, they have the ability to buy their time here. All 10 actives up for both teams. All 5 ultimates up for both teams here as well. So you're going to have a full strength fight So now the Olympus Bolts want to win here. Haddix working his way into the back. He's found what would have been a knockup, but Netroid uses his beads, Genetics does as well, and a shell got used. But Haddix used his beads in a blink on the other side. Maybe you're feeling okay if you're the Olympus Bolts, the best you could hope for.
Not too bad. Nice stun on the Twig.
Captain Twig has to leap away, and Netroid has melted Awesome Jake, and the snipes connect onto Barracuda as well. The clock seems to be striking midnight here for the Olympus Bolts. The left side Phoenix gone, Barracuda gone as well. I'm not sure history's going to be rewritten today. The Camelot Kings make their way onto the Titan. Venenu is still around as well, but look at the damage. The Olympus Bolts' hopes are crumbling, and the Camelot Kings take it in 2.
Wow, and not even close either, Dave. I mean, they came in and they dominated.
Would have expected. There were a lot of good moments in the first game where you got to see some sick saves, but in this game, it was all about the counter engage, I guess, realistically. Not only did you have some amazing saves from the Khepri, from Genetics, but you got Netroid with so much turnaround damage. There was a point where the Bolts were trying to retreat, thought maybe they were out of there. Variety had an absolutely sick re-engage, like right here, and those were those moments where it's just so difficult to figure out how to crack the shell that was the Kings. Every time you tried to dive in on somebody, well, they just got saved by Genetics. Anytime that you tried to get away from the fight, well, you just got pulled right back in by Variety. And you got to see Tings on a classic Hera pick do immense amounts of damage. Netroid with some beautiful snipes from the top ground. It just all lined up to be a King's Day.
And every time you thought you had the damage to take them out, well, there was Big Man Tings to answer in kind with that Hera under his belt. 4-0 onto the mid laner for that one. 3-1 for Variety, and Netroid again finishing as an unkilled onto that. And that puts him up, what now, 6-1 on that, Ron?
Yeah, makes it not only something that is apparently damn near unbeatable, but it speaks wonders. So, yeah, the Bolts didn't get a ton of kills here, but we have to be looking at it. It's the fact that they are your number 2 team. They have been this team that has really been fighting hard, both Phase 1 and this phase, to be up in the top, not just a consistently top 4 team, but consistently top 3. They've been consistently taking down your number 1 teams, and this is and was their one step closer. If the Bolts get this win, they pull ahead of far and few in between to be number 1. Even if it gets tied, its head-to-head goes towards the Bolts. And so this is a great step for them, because now you can see only one game is actually separating them.